Hello, 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 y'all, and welcome on back to Creators Spicy Tea, the podcast where we sit, we dish, and we spill the tea on adult content creation. And today, y'all, for 2 months in a row, which is unheard of, I am actually not alone in my bedroom talking to a mic. We actually have a guest today, and we are covering a topic that I don't actually have much experience in, a social platform that I don't have any expertise in because I don't really use it. Today, we're getting into the nitty gritty of Instagram. And y'all know me, y'all know my saying. I fully and 100% believe that the wisdom of the crowd is and always will be so much greater than the wisdom of the individual. Always. So I brought on someone, an amazing woman who has made her mark on social media with 10 million some followers across all platforms. And y'all, on Instagram alone, if I'm getting it right, it's like 7 point something million followers. So I would like to introduce Courtney, aka Ona Artist, and she has come and graced us to speak to us in depth about Instagram. And today, since I don't use the platform, I don't think I could benefit too much from all this information, but what I did was I reached out across the creator forums, including the Creator Spicy Tea Network, the Fetish Haven Network, the Fetish Market Social Network, and within the private Discord server Creators Resource Chats. And I asked y'all, what questions do you have on Instagram? So today is about getting you the information you need and you can benefit from. So can we please give a huge warm welcome to Courtney? Thank you so much for being here, Courtney. We can't appreciate you more. And I would love it if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your journey into Instagram and social media.
Oh gosh, I would love to. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I've just been learning more about what you offer and what you do and talk about, and it's really wonderful, beautiful, lovely. So thank you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so I have been on Instagram for 10 years, actually. I
Um,
started in 2015 and I was like, it's funny because even then I was like, oh my God, is it too late to start? I saw some of the questions you sent me and some models are asking that. And I thought
yeah.
then, I was like, 2015, it's too late to start. Turns out it's never too late to start. You can always start. And so I just started. I just started by putting up photos of myself. I started to spend lots of time on the platform, like probably more than anyone should, but like hours a day. Became really, really intrigued by learning how it worked. So I spent a lot of time there. I started to grow there. I started to really learn the ins and outs. And I wish I should know this timeline on the top of my head, but I probably grew to 3 million pretty quickly. I think I was there by 2020. And I love it. I think it's such a beautiful place for us to put our content. I'll talk about what I call how I break it down in my mind. I think about it as story, show, and share. So you want to figure out your brand, which is your story. Then you
Mhm.
want to figure out how to create beautiful content, which is your show, and then how to share it. So how to grow on the platform. And I kind of retroactively put that on what I was doing and have since actually created. So I should back up, sorry, and say I got on OnlyFans in 2020. That's sort of when I was like, "Oh, I feel like this is something really happening." And I had like what I call a private site before, which is like a member site. And then I found OnlyFans and I was like, "Oh my gosh," because right after starting, I was like, "Oh my gosh, there is so much traffic here. Like people already have accounts. There's just so much action." And I knew right away I would be making more than I was with my
Yeah.
private site. So that was exciting. And let's see. Yeah, so I was planning to retire when I got pregnant. I was like, I'm done making content. So I made tons of content to last like forever. And then I got pregnant, I took some time off, and then I was like, oh, wait, I think you can do pregnancy on OnlyFans too. And I hadn't known.
Yeah, smart.
Yes, and I was also learning that like MILFs are some of the biggest earners on the platform as well. So one thing I love about OnlyFans and this kind of modeling that we do is that like everybody, every body type is welcome and loved, and it's just about finding your audience essentially. So
I love that.
yeah, I love it too. I just think it's a really beautiful, in a way, just like no judgment zone that is unique to
Mhm.
find these days. So I ended up creating pregnancy content. And what I ended up doing is I started creating it under a different name. So the name for my pregnancy content is Luray Mama. I set a goal for myself to create her content and her platforms and her socials all completely independent of my Ona Artist socials, to basically test and see if these methods that I was teaching. Oh, sorry, I should back up and say I started coaching in 2020. So I started coaching models on, at the time, just Instagram in 2020. And so this is now 2022 when I got pregnant with my first child, my first baby. And I was like, okay, I want to see if I can like, yeah, just like do it from zero, because I obviously have a bit of a leg up, and like, is that really like, can you build from zero? And yes, you can. So I launched this. I actually have a PDF about it if anyone is interested in hearing it, like really like which platforms I started on, how I scaled. And I launched from zero and I got to $10,000 on my OnlyFans in 1 month. So I was like, wow, this is pretty sweet. So, um,
Beautiful.
and it was great because I have my Ona Artist OnlyFans also going. So I now have these two different personas and completely different socials and completely different audiences that I'm now tapping into. And I have since expanded, I would say, onto all socials. So I was really focused just on Instagram, but now I
Mhm.
have explored all of them. I've explored them in different ways. So like with my Luray Mama content, I put out explicit as in naked content for free, not behind a paywall. But with my own artist content, I wouldn't do that. So I've explored different avenues as well. And then most recently, I've started my MILF persona. So I now have a MILF page as well. And again, each of the ones I've kind of taken different approaches with and learned different things with. And they're things that I love to share about what I've learned. And they all have their own Instagrams and their own, yeah, their own worlds. So that's been my approach. And I would say that I'm also, to add on, I also am like primarily focused on socials. Like I definitely make OnlyFans content, but when it comes to like what I do on a daily basis, I'm spending time on my socials content, which is how I want to be spending my time. So
Yeah.
I don't spend any time on OnlyFans actually. And I think that's totally doable when you have new fans coming in regularly from
Mhm.
socials, which is in part due to spending a lot of time on socials, working on socials. And yeah, I don't even spend that much time working on socials, to be honest, anymore. More of my time is spent coaching, and that's how I'm really enjoying that right now. So yeah, that's the summary.
Girl, I said you're impressive. I didn't realize you were that impressive. Three different personas? No, you said three or four different personas? My
Yeah.
God, girl.
Yeah, yeah,
Seriously?
but I do them sequentially. It's not like all at once. If it was all at once, I couldn't do it. But I don't create any content for my own artist pages anymore. That's all like done. It's
Mm-hmm.
completed. And I'm working right now just on the MILF content. So
Got
it's,
you. Got
yeah.
you. So thank you for telling us a little bit about that. Honestly, I'm flabbergasted that you've gone through your career with that many personas. I've had one, and it's hard keeping her up that long. It's really impressive. If it's okay with you, though, I would like to hand the floor over to the creators and start asking some of their questions and just kind of get them the help they might need.
Awesome. I'd love that.
Okay. So the first question, and I'll say which subreddit and which area they all came from, just to give those areas some credit, came from the subreddit r slash OnlyFans advice. And you had mentioned that you just started, but if you were bringing in a brand new creator to your coaching program,
Mhm.
how would you tell them a new creator should start? How should a
Mhm.
new creator just launch into Instagram?
So I would say the first, well, just Instagram or kind of all the platforms? I mean,
Let's start just
just
Instagram.
Instagram. Okay, okay. So I would say, and Instagram is actually, I should say, my favorite platform to start with because I think it really helps you figure out what your story is. So I mentioned this before, your story, your brand, it's a thing that is really easy to kind of not pay attention to, but it's so important. Because you want to be, every person is unique. I used to think I wasn't unique at all. I was like, there's nothing unique about me. What, there's nothing. But it turns out there is something unique. And once I can really figure out what it is, it can help inform all the decisions I make and how people think of me. So like I'm a very, like I'll talk about my own artist persona, very all natural, brunette, like kind of crazy curly big hair. And actually in my photos, I'll often touch up my hair to make it like bigger because that became really a brand of mine, or like what people thought of. Very Americana, girl next door. I would wear very like in a way cheap lingerie. So if I ever wore like really expensive lingerie, which is some people would buy me, it wouldn't perform as well on my Instagram because I think my brand and my story was just like your girl next door. Like it's a very classic kind of girl next door vibe. So once you really figure out what those things are, then you can get into creating content for that. And then it's like more, I guess it's authentic content, not necessarily in that it's true to who you like really are, but just it's true to who
Yeah.
your brand is. So to who your persona is online, and being able to create content that's consistent and gives people this idea, and you fill that niche in their life for that kind of person. um, I found to be really important for growing because I think then when you're fit, when your followers are starting to really like your content, they get to know you, they start going on this journey with you. And for me, it really was a journey being okay, guys, we're here, we're going up to 600,000 or wherever we are. It was like something really that my followers came on with me, and it makes it all more exciting. So sorry, okay, so I'm kind of blabbing on, but where would
No, you're good.
you gotta start by figuring out what your brand is, shooting some content. Instagram really prefers the more aesthetic content. So the really amateur content, let's say that's really not touched up or not well lit, that something like maybe Reddit is more welcoming towards, Instagram really is not. And I've built these standards by being like, okay, what are the big models? What does their content look like? The big models who have gotten big through social media. So not necessarily like not mainstream celebrities. We're not talking about them. And we're also not talking about people who have like bought thousands of dollars in promo on Instagram every month. I'm talking about people who've really just grown from Instagram, like natively
Hmm.
organic growth, suggested growth. So, yeah, beautiful content. That is sort of the next thing, is to make beautiful content. And the biggest thing I would say for that is natural light tends to really be incredibly important. And in a way, simple poses that show off your body. I would say clothing that's tight. So
Hmm.
you start with those. If you start so what you want to do is you want to start posting photos and reels. Right now, it used to be that reels were doing so great. Now photos are doing really great. And I go through, yeah, it's really nice actually for me because I love photos.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and you can tell, so you can see if you look at, you want to make your account a business or a creator account so that you can see the stats on on your pictures in particular, and you can see really clearly like which pictures are getting the most explore views. And then there's something about this picture, maybe it's the outfit, maybe it's the setting, maybe it's the pose. You want to
Hmm.
kind of I've recently developed a method where you just kind of figure out what it is and then you repeat it. It's actually pretty simple.
Yeah.
You repeat it. So that works really well if you're getting some explore views right off the bat. If you're not getting explore views right off the bat and your account's really small, like you've just started it, it might be that you need like a little boost to get kind of above all the bots or all the other people who are at like 10 followers, right? And
Yeah.
in that case, what's really good right now is lives. So Instagram lives are really, really good for growth, and they are free. You do them with other models who are your size typically. I have a free live group in my Telegram group. I call it the YBI Hub, the Your Best Insta Hub. And then you can also just find lots of them on Telegram or on Instagram. And that is like a really good way to just get some growth started and get Instagram knowing you're like a real person, essentially.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would say. You can also, of course, buy promo. You can buy promo live. That's my favorite kind of promo right now. If you do want promo just to get a boost, obviously some people are like, okay, I want to move faster. I want to get to like 5,000, 10,000 pretty quickly, which you can do. But typically that does take some more investment in promo, unless you are right off the bat growing organically. But that doesn't always happen. It does sometimes and doesn't sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was actually a question that I had personally. I'm just like totally going wild away from the questions, but promo, you think paying for promo on Instagram is like a really beneficial, like good ROI? It's a good investment to put in?
If it's good promo, which is hard to
Yeah.
find these days, it tends to be overpriced. And right now, the return for Instagram promo is a lot less than it was years ago. So like, yeah, it's just harder to get a bang for your buck. However, I guess that's part of why I love live promo because it's really consistent. So you could get, I would
Okay.
say, a model going live with me for the first time, as long as their account is like pretty good, they're gonna get 300 to 400 followers in an hour of going live. And just really authentic engagement. There's no like question about where it, came from. It's just by going live. So that's my favorite, and that's how people are getting the most followers that I know. People who are buying page posts or story posts, I think the return on that is super low right now. So you can if you want, but I would definitely start small. And I also have a guide in the YBI Hub about how to tell if it's real followers you're getting. So just to throw out there, one thing
Oh,
you want,
cool.
yeah, I know, because like it's like, how do you even know? So one thing to throw out is like, so if you buy promo from a model, the followers you should be getting should also be following that model.
That would
If they're
make sense.
not, I know. It's like when I realized this, I was like, oh, duh. Because I spent so long trying to figure this out. It's so simple
I
in the
wouldn't
way.
even think of that though.
Yeah, but no, you wouldn't think of it. And then maybe you got like 100, 200, and you're like, is that real? Like, it's hard to know if it's real. So what you would do is you go check and see if those guys are also following the model you purchased from. Another thing, another big question when you're looking at Instagram pages, because there's a wide variety of engagements that people can have based on like the age of their account. So my account, my Ona Artist account actually has less engagement than my newer accounts because it's older, it's been around longer, followers have dropped off of their activity, blah, blah, blah. So the way you can assess, or let's just say someone's getting like really amazing likes and you're like, is this real? Because also likes and comments can be purchased as well. And the way you can tell that is you want to look at basically a kind of low to middle performing post. So one that doesn't seem to have gone viral, and see if the guys who are commenting and liking that post are also following that model. So there's a little track through you can do on the phone pretty easily to see that. But that's one that is a good way to assess it.
Good to know. And as long as it's cool with you, we are definitely going to link the Telegram group and Your Best Insta's website and all of those goodies in the description box below so that you guys can get more and more and better information than any nonsense I could possibly provide. So you mentioned you've had all these personas, which obviously means you've had more than one account. But in the Discord server, creators resource chats, someone asked if having multiple accounts is worth it. They said that they've seen creators saying you should have 12 plus, but it seems, and specifically, it would be a nightmare to upkeep and maintain.
Yes.
Agreed. So how many would you say is kind of the sweet spot?
That's a really good question. So I think you could totally do it with like one, two, or three. That's what I would say. And it's up to you. It's about how you work and how you want to work, basically. So I have developed many over time, but I never move on to the next one until the current one. I'm like, okay, I have a handle on it. I have too much content. I can't even put up all this content, like I have an abundance of content. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
So, what I always do is when I'm trying to like make a new sort of profile or account work, I always really focus on one, exclusively one. I post on it, I shoot content for it, I make sure the flow through of content happens quickly so that I can post quickly, make sure I then get feedback about how it's doing, then create more content. It's a real kind of, what do you call it, symbiotic relationship. So a lot of models will like hand off profiles to assistants. And I think once the account's really going well, I think that totally makes sense. But I think it's really hard for an assistant on their own to get an account to go well because they just don't have the investment that you do in it.
Yeah. And it's not the same personality shining through.
Totally. The personality or the personal attachment to it, it just
Yeah.
it gets I see very often that when the assistants run it, it just kind of loses it. However, I will say I do know some models right now who are definitely I know who are doing like the 12 account. They're posting on all 12 accounts, even sometimes, or not even their assistants. And I think it's doable, like if you create that much content. And one thing to mention actually is that Instagram had said that they weren't gonna basically or they were going to deprioritize accounts that were posting the same piece of content across a number of accounts. They mentioned that sometime last year, and it does seem that's coming up. It's a little unclear. Some models have had it happening to their accounts and some haven't. But the general idea is if you're going to run 12 accounts, you probably should have 12 different pieces of content for those accounts, which is like a lot. Um,
Nightmare. Too much.
yeah, and I think, and I was just hearing about a method that some people are using on Threads in particular of like having 50 accounts, 100. Actually, I heard the number 180 accounts. I know, I was like, oh my God.
When do you sleep? Oh my God. That's too many.
Well, they're
That's
having
insane.
assistants post on them, I think. I mean,
That's
primarily
true.
assistants, but I personally am not about the numbers. I'm more about the quality because what you can do with one account that has quality is beyond what you can do with 180 accounts, half of whom probably will get banned for something just because of like the IP having so many accounts at once.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need that many. I think you should do what feels right for you. And before adding on, it's always nice to have a backup or two, right? But I think it's always best to focus on one account and then have one or two backups that are like in the background. And you can post on those as much as you want, but you're really focused on the one account that you're trying to make happen. Because all you need is that one account to really glow up.
See, that's what makes sense to me. So I'm glad to know that that is what is kind of would be what you would teach. So the next question also came from Fetish Market Social, and it's a little bit more tricky and a little bit more of the technical aspect. Somebody had mentioned that their content was being pushed to a demographic that they did not intend for it to be pushed to. So have you had that happen to you? And how do you switch that up so your content is pushed to the correct demographic?
So, a few things here. So, I always love going live with I'm just going to assume that the goal is sort of English speaking, OnlyFans buying audience.
That is
Um,
usually the push,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, one thing I like doing is suggesting, and I think has helped people, is going live with on Instagram, going live with other models who speak English, who have a majority English, sorry, a majority US audience or other English speaking audience. So really targeting that kind of people. Also trading, you can SFS, you can trade in story with people who really, again, it's either or it's maybe both, that they're speaking English, but also you can ask for their insights and ask what their top country is. And I personally always judge it just by being the top country. Some people talk specific percentages. I think that's really overblown. I don't think that matters at all. I just think you do want ideally US to be the largest percentage or near largest, ideally largest. So that's one thing. Some people will go in and actually remove followers who seem like they're from countries that can't buy OnlyFans. I personally, there are other kind of tricks that people can do, but I haven't seen them really helping anybody. So I think in a way it's like kind of like just do like the general good practice. Like also oh yeah, another thing
Yeah.
you could do is you could try speaking more if you maybe don't speak at all on your videos. So if you were to speak, and again, speaking English, that should push it to an English audience.
That would make very, very much sense. And honestly, that makes sense in the fact that, like, if somebody is not understanding you, they're not going to continue to watch you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's so silly. I've always seen Instagram as this beast that I could never tame, but just hearing you talk about it, it's just making so much more sense. You're helping me like a mother trucker right now. Thank you. So switching away from like building your account and getting all that going, let's talk a little bit more like privacy and security. And I'm going to combine a couple questions that were asked into one because I think they're going to go hand in hand. So the first one was from r/findom support, and it was, how do you protect your privacy? And then another one was, how do you make sure people you know, IRL, so the people you know, like your boss or your coworkers or your mom and dad, are not going to find your spicy Instagram? How do you lock that down?
Very good question. Block them
Mm-hmm.
is the first way. So when you create the account, block them. Another really good thing to do is to have a separate work dedicated phone where there's no crossover. Like you're not sending Instagrams from or Instagram posts from one account to another. It's just clean, no crossover. So they're not in your contacts. They're just nowhere on your phone, basically.
Yeah.
So all that said, like typically what happens when somebody who is sort of linked, like, so if I were to do it on my personal phone, it would probably say to people I know, this person just joined Instagram under the name X. Like someone might
Mm-hmm.
see that in the notification. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know if it's 100% effective to do a new phone, but I think it is. But I wouldn't want anyone to go do that and assume it. Like you should do your own research about that. I early on actually for like I was for artistic reasons, I ended up linking my stage name with my personal name. So I didn't have to worry about that so much. However, from everything I can tell, if you do get a separate phone and you just, a separate Apple ID, obviously a separate phone number, and you keep all your work stuff on there, I don't think they should be suggesting it to people in your.
Mm-hmm.
Now with TikTok, you probably know that you can request that they don't. I think it used to be on by default that they would suggest it to your neighbors essentially, but I think that now that's not on by default, but always check if you're concerned. With Instagram, yeah, obviously don't connect your contacts or anything like that as well. But then what if they were randomly just to get suggested you and it actually
Mm-hmm.
had nothing to do with the fact that you're like within the same circles? I mean, a couple things, you're probably pretty big if that's happening. So like, you might be kind of moving on to a different stage. But again, I think that's where blocking people is if like you're really concerned, block them.
Yeah, that's what would make sense to me too. That's what I did when I first started my little Instagram that I abandoned a year ago. I spent a good hour going through my other list and just block, 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 block. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. You can go through your other following. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I did. So then one of the most commonly asked questions, like by every creator who's ever been on Instagram ever, right? It was specifically brought up in the Discord server, Fetish Market Social, and Creators Advice. Everyone's getting flagged. Everyone is getting flagged. How do you prevent your account being flagged, shadow banned, or just outright taken down?
Yes, very good question. So, yeah, to clarify, so by flags, what we probably mean is if when you look in your account status, it'll say some posts have been marked as non recommendable. And one thing you do want to do is you always want to check this because some people still don't realize that it's there and you want to check it. And I recommend that if you see posts are flagged as non-recommendable, you want to delete them. I always screenshot them and I'm like, okay, what is actually going on? Is there something in these posts that I can actually learn from? Sometimes there is. You're like, oh, wow, that's all where I don't know, there's a little from behind, or maybe my legs are open a little. Like sometimes there is something to learn. And in that case, just don't post that kind of content or take a break from posting that kind of content. So the first first thing that I will do is I will go for about a week or two and I'll just post the safest content I have, which means front facing, no thong coming up above anything, just like clothed, very chill. And it can be hard because it like takes a hit on your engagement, but it's a good practice to just go safer. Now, sometimes it makes sense with their flagging and sometimes it doesn't make sense with their flagging. When it doesn't make sense, when it does make sense, you're like, okay, I'll just remove it. That's fine. You know, that you can kind of, you can make sense of it. When it doesn't make sense, it's sort of another thing. And you want, one thing you want to look at, and this is also a list I have for free in my YBI hub, is the list of things that you do not want to be doing on Instagram. There's a big list and a lot of people don't know this. And I've compiled it over 10 years of like teaching, being in groups, myself having stuff flagged. What are the things that get flagged? Basically, what you want to do if your account's having trouble is not do any of them. Now, people will say, oh, but so and so is doing them, right? Someone else, I see them doing it. What I would say to that is their account is probably in better standing and that they haven't been doing risky things. And, or I think about it as a bandwidth. So, like, typically you can get away with like one thing that's a little riskier. So, let's just say putting a link in your story is considered a little risky, actually. Saying click my link is very risky. You never want to say that. So there's some things in a way you want to never do, and there's some things you can do a little bit of. A link in story is actually a bit risky. So, but you see a lot of people doing that. So the flip side, or on the other side of this sort of spectrum, is they're probably doing other things that are really safe. Like maybe they're not doing any lingerie, or they're only doing, so content in public is actually typically really considered safe because you can't, Instagram just reads it as safer, probably because you can't get in public, I guess. So there's a balance, there's a bandwidth, and you have to figure out your personal bandwidth. So you might see that someone's doing something and you're like, oh, well, I should be able to do that and that and that. Or actually something I've heard a lot of recently is like, I saw that on my Explore page. And then actually, if you go and look at that Explore page, to say a really risky photo, often it's from like 2022 or something. And you're like, oh, or it's from an account that hasn't posted since 2022 also. So like they're not there, or it's from an account that's going to be deleted in a week. So, you know, just because someone, and especially if it's not a big account, let's say it's an account that's like 30,000 posting something really risky, you don't want to then go post something really risky because you think it's okay because they're just about to be deleted. Likewise, pay attention to those dates because sometimes it is from a long time ago. So there are a list of things. You never want to say OnlyFans. You don't want to say OF. When I first switched to OnlyFans, I said OF because I was like, oh, that's fine. And it was immediately flagged. And I hadn't had any flags, like actually ever. It was when I started saying OnlyFans and OF that I started getting my first flags back in 2020 that were like consistent. And that was then, it was removals, not flags. So it's even nastier, or it's more scary. It's more dramatic. So there are a list of things. And if you don't know what to do, you look at this list that I make and you just don't do any of them. It's like it's really that simple. And then if you're like, I really want to put a link in my story, like, okay, if you haven't had flags in a while, you're feeling confident, go ahead and do that. That's fine. But then if it does get flagged, then you don't want to keep doing it, basically.
Yeah.
And one more thing is that, you know, you have to really keep this idea that like Instagram is right and Instagram's the boss. And it's kind of annoying, but like there's no use in fighting with Instagram because I've seen models do that and they lose their account. So you just don't want to fight. Like I've seen people be like, oh, one model was like, oh, they took down a photo of her with actually was a ball gag in her mouth. And she just like posted it right back up. And she was like, no, Instagram, this is fine. And I was just like, I don't think you should be doing that. And she did. Eventually her account did get deleted. She was just like fighting.
That's not shocking that it was taken down. My goodness.
Right. Oh yeah, implied nudes. I mean, I could go through the list of things, but I think it's better to just look at the hub. But yeah, implied nudes, you don't want to do anything like that. You don't want to censor with text. You don't want to be like, the rest is on my OnlyFans. I mean, you just want to, the fact is at this point, all guys know it's at the link in bio. You don't even need to say link in bio. They know if they want to see more of you. All they got to see you do is see a little bit of you and be like, oh, what else does she do?
I'm glad you mentioned that you have that whole list. That was one of my questions. I was going to ask, where's the best place to get an updated list of what not to do? And it's you. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I keep that up to date. I think it's so important that people have like that basic information because Instagram does not make it clear. There's nowhere it's clear. I mean, I just I've been doing it for so long. It's a very established list of things. Like if you showed me a photo, I would be able to immediately say if it's risky or not, essentially. So yes, I forgot. So sometimes accounts do get deleted. And we also, this is another thing we say on top of in the hub is like what the best way is to get your account back. You used to be able to submit a form requesting it back. Nowadays, there's not a form, but you still can follow the rules. And what you always want to do is follow the rules to request it back. Usually, what's actually happening is that our accounts get maybe flagged as potential bot accounts, BOT accounts, or potential accounts that like we don't own it, or someone could be impersonating us. There's a lot of that is going on Instagram. So my theory has always been that Instagram takes care of that by just deleting people, which is a shitty way to take care of it.
Yeah, it is.
It is. But it's just what they do. And actually, it's interesting. I was just exploring Blue Sky recently, and they actually do a similar thing. If they think you're spam, you're gone. But then you can request it back and be like, oh, actually, so I mean, it was quite fast. I was like, I own all this content. I'm sorry if I did anything wrong. Just let me know what I did. It's all me. It's consensual, whatever. And then they get brought it back in an hour. Now, Instagram's not quite as good as that, but it's a similar idea. They're doing the same thing. They're taking the accounts down for the same reason, I think. And that reminder of why Blue Sky was doing it just helped remind me that that's why I think Instagram does it typically too. They're not taking you down because you're an adult creator, actually. I don't think. As long as you're safe enough, as long as like you're following the rules. If you're not following the rules, they are taking you down because you're doing risky things. But if you're following the rules, and also you should never obviously link to your OnlyFans in your link, but you can always link to it from a page that your link in bio links to. Okay, so if you do get deleted, you want to follow their steps. They will say like, oh, do this and this and this. I would say about half of the time your accounts do come back that way. They just want you to verify a phone number. They want to prove there's a real person behind it. Sometimes you do have to like show an ID just to show that like you exist as a person. You just want to do that. About half the time the accounts do come back that way. I would say we're verging on maybe another half the time where they don't. And then sometimes then you have to kind of start getting more creative. I know a model recently who like talked to Meta support and was able to get it back. There are people you can pay to get it back. There are these other things you can do. And I will say that in 10 years of being on Instagram, I've never seen an account not come back when the model like wanted it to come back, when she worked hard, and as long as they weren't doing crazy risky. So even like way back in the day, I don't know if you were paying attention then, but like Britannia had a really risky account. Allison Parker had a risky account. Both of those accounts are now back. And so it's like you can get it. You can get it back. I mean, it's really difficult and frustrating for me as well. Because you can always get it back if it's important to you. You can make it happen, and it's different than TikTok. I've heard if you just like keep submitting appeals or something, you do get it back eventually. But like, I just don't have the patience for that. I think of TikTok as throwaway accounts, but Instagram is not a throwaway account. It's like a lifetime account that you can take with you always. If you want to transition into another line of work, you could take it with you. A lot of models will go more into mainstream influencing after being a more adult influencer, like Miss Jenny is Summer Rae. Both of those were more like targeted to men, and they flipped their audience to women. What is her Genesis Lopez used to be a cam model, and then she started getting really big, growing really well, actually in conjunction with Summer Rae. A whole story behind that. And now she's really just selling fitness plans to girls, to women. So it can really last a long time for you.
Really good to know. That's really good to know because I always had this concept because I did have one Instagram account taken down and I'm like, well, all right, time to make a new one. I didn't know you could like genuinely fight and have a fighting chance to get it back. So that's really good to know.
Absolutely.
So this is going to seem a bit broad, but in the Discord server, the question was asked, what is the hack? What is the number one tip, the number one trick, the key to getting your content pushed to as many other accounts as possible? Is there one key or is there like a set of tips that you would give?
Very good question. So, I would say it goes a little back to what I was saying at the beginning with like the reels and photos. So, you want to be posting reels, you want to be posting photos. And I would also say it goes back to what I was saying about creating really beautiful, aesthetic, Instagram focused content. So, a lot of people will repost like TikToks and they'll be like, oh, why isn't my Instagram growing? TikTok is actually a completely different beast. Actually, all the platforms are completely different beasts. Different kinds of content do well on there. So one really good way to do it is to scroll through your explore page. You want to follow a few sexy models, then go scrolling through your explore page, see what's doing well. You can totally recreate trends. I find that when you recreate trends that, it's always sort of in your own way, which is exciting. You have like this like angle that's your own angle to it. In my opinion, it really is publishing great content. And I feel like it's a little annoying to say that, but I feel like it really is true because that's how you get the
Makes
explore.
sense.
Yeah, it really is. And again, just seeing what's doing well on Instagram based on people who are doing well through Instagram, natively on Instagram. So that's another thing I notice a lot. A lot of OnlyFans models will be like, oh, I was following this kind of group of OnlyFans models, but they're all really focused on making OnlyFans content. And then they go on Instagram. They don't really have an Instagram aesthetic. They might be buying a lot of promo. It's just that's not actually how you grow on Instagram in a big way. You want to be paying attention to the people who are more native to Instagram.
It does lend to the theory that you're going to perform better on the platforms you use as a user
Yeah.
more than just as a promotion. So you have to engage and look and see what's being done and what's working.
Totally. That's totally right. And I think one nice thing about Instagram is the kind of content you create for Instagram can be posted on other platforms pretty well because it's sort of, I think of it as just the most, I don't know if generic's the right word, but just the most like applicable to everywhere. So like right now I'm posting some content that I used to post on Instagram back in like 2020. They definitely got more restrictive, but like I call them Instagram classics. They're just really fun, creative poses. And I'm putting them on Blue Sky and they're doing great because it's just like because they're great photos, so they'll do really well on other platforms as well. So that's another nice thing about focusing on creating Instagram content and then like spreading that other places. But like you say it very well. It is true that often some platforms do need content created for them
Mhm.
to do well on them. TikTok's a big one.
That does make sense, especially with TikTok. It's very particular with the specific trends that last for 10 minutes that you must hit within that 10 minutes. So now we have so much more information on creating our accounts, protecting our privacy, and doing all of that. But we had a whole bunch of questions regarding content creation specifically. So within the creators spicy tea community and within just the general creator community, we have so many different creators with so many different styles. So when it comes to completely faceless creators who do not show face, would you say Instagram is a viable option or maybe look elsewhere and focus efforts elsewhere?
Yes, Instagram is totally a viable option. And one of like the classics to check out for this is Slawada, Slawada. She was like one of the OG, or she is the OG faceless creator on Instagram. And I would say what you're facing though is you're facing that you're going to need to be a bit more creative with the kind of content you're creating, which is exciting, frankly. So a lot of things like holding the phone in front of your face, your hair covering your face, just different ways. I think it tends not to be as good when you're just cropping out the face. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be taking the content intentionally you just got to take a more creative approach to it, and think about how you can in a fun way hide your face. I've seen people use masks, right? Especially like with COVID, the aftermath of COVID, masks are a big thing. I've seen some people, it's really interesting, and I think could be explored more, is using like Face App or an app like that to change the face. So you still are showing your face, but you're not showing your face. And so there are lots of really cool ways that it can be done, but it does require a bit more creativity and work.
I think that makes sense. And I think for faceless creators, I'm like, Y'all have so much more work to do. Oh my God, you have to either do the cropping just right, or the camera angle just right, or the just right. It's impressive to me. What about the creators who, like me, so I specialize in direct sales. What about people who do specialize in direct sales, but specifically physical panty content? We saw this question from a Fetish Haven. Someone asked, I specifically do direct sales physical content. Is Instagram a safe platform to promote on, or will that just get me popped like no one's business?
Well, I would say you always want the monetization, the exchange to happen on a different platform. So you don't want to be selling it in the DMs. I mean, if someone requests or something, you could be like, "Yeah, you got to go over there to check it out." But I would be very careful because definitely DMs are monitored. Everything is monitored. So you don't want to post on Instagram what you're not ready for them to see. I mean, you could even do some playful captions probably where you're like, "Do you like this pair?" or something, and if they
Yeah.
know that you're selling them, they'll know, "Oh yeah, that's the pair I want." And then they go to your link in bio. But you don't want to sell them on Instagram. You want to sell them on wherever you're probably already selling them. You just have that as the link in your link tree or equivalent.
That does make sense. And I'm really glad you're confirming my suspicion that, because I always have been saying I'm pretty sure your DMs are monitored. And I'm glad to hear someone who knows more about this saying, yeah, no, they're monitored. The last question we'll land on, since somehow this is now an hour long. I don't know how this happened so fast, but the last question we'll land on, and only answer if you're totally comfortable, would be, what type of content and format of content, we mentioned reels and all that, would produce the best sales and conversions to subscribers for you?
So for me, it's just all about the views. It's just all about which one is getting the most views. So I would say do whichever is getting the most non-follower views, I should add. So like with Reels, you'll see a non-follower percentage. That's what you want to keep working towards. If you see one particular thing doing well, you want to be posting more and more of that. Photos, it's that explore number that is very like that's the number that shows. It'll also give you a non-follower percentage, but it's the explore number is the one that you really want to focus on. So I personally, I don't find that like photos or reels do better particularly. It's just about which is getting the most views.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Courtney, I feel like I have grilled your ass enough today. I've peppered you with so many questions. Thank you a million times over, coming from me and coming from everyone else in the creator community. Thank you so much for your help. And to kind of start us closing out, I would love it if you could take a couple minutes and just plug, girl, plug away. Tell us about your best Insta. Go ham.
Okay, great, great. So I do want to say one more thing, which I'm just thinking is because I think it was in one of the questions you ended up not asking. And one thing I want to mention is that with Instagram, it's really about new followers. As you get a bigger account, it's great 'cause you can trade with bigger people and that kind of gives you access potentially, or does give you access to more followers. But it's also like I could have the same number of recents from you if we're having the same number, if we're both getting, let's say, 1 or 2,000 followers new a day, right? So it's really that new follower number is so important. I just say that because that's also part of why it's like starting from zero is actually great because then you have millions to go. I'm actually with my main, I feel like I'm a bit at a limit. I'm like, okay, it's harder to reach new eyes. So just want to say that. Okay, so in terms of what I offer, I have this free Telegram group that I mentioned, the YBI Hub. We have lives, we have SFS, we have lots of free information. So I would love everybody to come join us there. I then offer basically two paid options. One is if you buy anything in my shop, and that can be like a story shout out, a live, I have an Instagram accelerator, just like any smaller product, then you can join us lifetime to the Social Success Club. That is my basically chat group with all the models who have taken my class or models who have purchased one thing and then are in there. And it's a very active chat group where we stay up on things. We have different topics. We're focusing on different platforms each month. So actually last month was Blue Sky, which is why I'm like, oh wow, I feel like I know so much about Blue Sky all of a sudden. We all focused on it together. It was really exciting. So my accounts, I think my Blue Sky is like at 2000 where it started like super low, and we have great experts in there who are really willing to share, and we're all learning together in there. So that's been really cool. This month we're doing X Twitter, and we plan it, we go out. So it's really, that's like a more like I would say though casual, like if you're like, oh, I think I want to come in and out, that kind of thing. And the big program that I offer is called the Social Success Intensive, and that's a 1 month class. We sit here like this. It's a group class, so usually just a few students, and we really we look at your profile every time we meet. I give you like the full audit or rundown of what I think you should do. You learn, we go through the story show share with lots of readings and feedback. We look at how you touch up. I share my process. I share information for how I've grown on every platform and what I think works. So our next class starting in, I guess, 3 weeks from now. So in March, or I guess it depends on when this goes out, but March 1st will be the next class that's starting. So, and I love meeting new people and working with new people. It's really the most fun thing for me right now. So I'd love to have anyone from your community. You could also always reach out to me on Telegram. My @ is YourBestInsta. Any questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank you.
fucking much, Courtney. I had to sneak one F word in. This was too clean of a podcast episode for me and my taste. We had to get one in there. But thank you again. And y'all, thank you guys for the questions. Thank you for helping make this episode happen. And I very much so hope you guys are all staying so safe, so sane, and good Lord, I hope you are all flourishing.